Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can submit that anonymously at asksean.org. So in this video, I'm actually going to be fielding one of the anonymous questions that has been sent in. And yeah, so I'm just going to refer here to what this person has written. They're wondering about why they are afraid to date, which I want to start by just saying this is very common. And there's all sorts of reasons why we can be afraid to date. But yeah, you're in good company with much of American culture, at least. Yeah, there's a variety of reasons that this can be intimidating, that this can be really vulnerable. But I'm just going to read what this person has written. So they said, "Hey Sean, I'm 21 and currently in my third year in college. I have a problem with my mind. I want to be in a committed relationship, but for some reason, when a girl gets close to me, I just pull away, even though I have attraction towards them. I don't understand this because it really eats me up. I'm not afraid to ask them out. I'm not afraid to show my interest. But when they show interest back, I just walk away and do nothing." So there's some great clues here in what this person has written in kind of a broad direction. I want to go ahead and rule out one option that I don't think is the case here, but it's something that sometimes can be at play in scenarios where there's a pattern of pursuit and then not following through on relationship. And that's more of a pattern where the pursuit itself is what is sought after. So we as humans, we can kind of get addicted to sort of the excitement of the chase. But we can end up getting into a dynamic where that is sort of the end in and of itself. And so it's like once the chase is over, then it's like we need to find another person to chase. I don't feel like that's what's going on here, and this is just an intuitive hunch based on what this person has shared. It just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't strike me as that. Like I don't. I don't know. I'm just not picking up, at least in terms of what they've written here, that there's that the intensity and the big draw is in the chase itself. My feel from what they've shared is that they really are longing for intimacy, for connection, for closeness, but they keep running into something happening once that actually starts to become a possibility. And so this gets into a variety of kind of potential things that can be going on. But broadly, what I would hypothesize is that there's something scary. Like there's something unsettling about closeness. That perhaps in some way closeness in the past wasn't safe. Perhaps there's a fear that if I let myself actually embrace closeness and connection, that it'll go away. So right there, those are two big categories, right? Like, are there ways in which intimacy was dangerous? That could be physically, sexually, psychologically. There's a whole spectrum there, right? Of kind of what that might mean. Are there ways in which intimacy has been really unreliable, and so it's like I really want for it, but I can't count on it to stick around. And so it's like once it starts to become available, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know if I can trust this. And so something comes up like that that takes over to kind of to protect us. As I'm kind of glancing here again at kind of what this person has written. Yeah, I don't know. it could be either of these, and in combination of these two broad categories. For some reason, I wonder a little bit more about the second one. Perhaps was, are there some experiences, particularly with parents, maybe with one's mother, um, where, yeah, where connection was unreliable. Um, this is where if I was in conversation with someone, I would be, we would be collaboratively, right, kind of testing this out. Like I'm going off of little intuitive hunches and guesses, right? Um, and so I'd be really trying to feel out and inviting the other person to kind of, and so you, the viewer, whether you are the person who wrote in this question, or if you're someone who resonates with this question, you're like, oh, I could have written a question like this. I would invite you to be kind of checking in with the things I've already said, and really trying to feel like, okay, where do you feel resonance? Where does something in you kind of light up in terms of like, ooh, that kind of feels right, or light up in terms of like, ooh, that feels uncomfortable. Both of those are helpful clues, right? Like, sorry, I feel like I got a little stray hair hanging down on my face somewhere. But yeah, so these are both clues, like both, whether a sense of resonance or a sense of discomfort. Because the discomfort is like, okay, so something sensitive is being touched on. That means we might be onto something. It at the very least, we're onto something that needs healing. It could be something totally unrelated, and it just happens to be touched on somehow by something something that we're talking about here, but is maybe not related to the core question at hand. But chances are it's hearkening at least to something that that is needing addressing, even if it doesn't relate to this. Yeah. Pausing here to think a little more. Yeah, I mean the writer, they're expressing, it really gets to them. Like there's a real discouragement and confusion of just like, oh, this eats me up. I don't know why I do this. Like I'm drawn to this person. I find them really interesting, really attractive. I pursue them. I take those risks, right? So like there's a motivation. Like they're really interested. They're showing up. Uh, and then when the other person, when the young woman starts to reciprocate back and be like, "Oh, I'm interested in you too," then it's like, it's interesting the way the writer puts things. I just walk away and do nothing. It's almost like that's a bit of a flight, right? And almost a little bit of a shutting down. Like it's like something happens internally. I'm wondering, this would be my question to the writer. Like, is something happening internally that feels so intense that your system is having to kind of go into this place of just like, we got to shut this shit down. Like I can't go there. I can't do this. Can't do this. And it may be happening so quickly that this may be part of the confusion, right? Is it's just like, these can be really powerful survival instincts in us when there are places of pain that we have not been able to be with, that are very intense. Like I sort of think about it like a nuclear reactor melting down, and like all these shield doors are automatically closing and whatnot, or like in a movie, like in you know a submarine has been breached and like doors close, or I don't know. I mean, you think fill in with like some kind of like sci-fi movie kind of thing, but like this automatic, like things happening really fast to try to contain the damage. And this has this harkens to that. This has qualities of that, and just in that, even in that little snippet, I just walk away and do nothing. And I want to give a pause here to kind of explain some things. I'm remembering now, I'd meant to say some of this at the outset, but because this is part of what can be confusing is like, how can I be so interested and then suddenly so like I'm out of here, so seemingly disinterested, although it's not even that they aren't still interested, because they feel again, looking here at what they write, I mean, they feel attraction towards them, and it really eats them up that they're not moving forward. Um, yeah, so this may not even just disinterest, which is again why I guess it doesn't feel like that the chase is the thing, you know? Like, I don't think it would eat them up in the same way. Um, I think the question would be framed, the story would be framed very differently. Anyways, the thing I wanted to get to is that we have different aspects of us or different parts. This doesn't mean we have multiple personalities. Though if we're like wounded enough, if we're fragmented enough, the different parts that can, kind of manifest in like what we might think of or clinically call kind of a multiple personality situation. But most likely that's not the case here, and that's not you the typical viewer. Like that's an intense severity of fragmentation of the psyche, which I don't. Um, if you have been diagnosed with multiple personalities, like I'm not trying to shame you or anything like that. I'm just trying to delineate like it. Yeah, like that's not a dynamic that the average person is going to be grappling with. Like, so we need to be able to distinguish here between degrees of intensity. So yeah, I don't know. That's feels tricky to talk about because it's like I'm not trying to be pejorative or anything, but we do need to be able to distinguish here. So yeah. So what do I mean by parts? So I mean, there's different ways of thinking about this. We can partly think about parts in terms of we just have different aspects to who we are, right? Like, it's like sometimes I'm in a silly mood, sometimes I'm in a serious mood. And so that's just, different aspects to one's personality, right? So we can think about parts in that way. We also can think about parts in terms of woundedness, which is going to then be relevant, right, to something like, multiple personality disorder and whatnot. But when I'm thinking about it in terms of woundedness, what I'm thinking about is that I experienced something, or maybe a pattern of some things, some repeated things of a similar kind that I couldn't fully be with. I didn't have enough internal resources and external resources. External resources being support people in my life, my parents, family members, friends, to help me actually be with and stay with whatever the difficult thing was. And so some of that experiential data, if you will, kind of gets stored. Like it couldn't be fully felt, it couldn't be digested at the time. And so it gets a bit frozen. And when that happens repeatedly, so if our brain works off a pattern. So if I experience something similar later, then it's like our brain's like, okay, we're going to store that with, the other stuff that's kind of like that. And so that, we can sort of build up, whether it's a build up because I have repeated experiences with the same individual, like with one of our parents or both of our parents, or if it's maybe all different individuals, but it's a similar pattern. Like I keep having experiences where I feel hurt in this kind of way. And so then that can be a wounded part that isn't very integrated with the rest of our internal system, and is only going to show up when something evokes it. And so that's what I think is going on here. So this individual, like they have motivation, they're able to take risks, they initiate. And so in those when they're doing that, they're in a mode, or they're acting out of parts of them that have some boldness, some ability to pursue, to put themselves out there. But as soon as intimacy is starts to be reciprocated, it evokes a different part of them. Again, this doesn't automatically mean multiple personalities. That's a question of severity, in terms of like what's the severity of the wounding, and how sort of disintegrated are our parts, and what's our parts' relations to each other, and so all sorts of complicated stuff there. I'm not gonna. This isn't not meaning to unpack all that. But I feel like I need to say a little bit there because I feel like that's a question that's going to come up in people's minds. So I'm wondering about, for the author here, the writer of this. Yeah, I'm wondering what pain this part is carrying. This part that for this part of them, this is not the part doing the pursuing. This is the part that has the job of remembering, I've been hurt in certain intimate places, certain intimate contexts in my life, and I don't trust it. I don't trust it because I've been hurt maybe like actively, like in terms of intrusion, right? Boundary violations, whether that's people's big emotions, whether again that's, physical abuse, sexual abuse, those kinds of awful things. Or I don't trust it because it was very inconsistent. And so it's like, it's probably going to go away. I don't want to get my hopes up. It's because I haven't been able to deal with the original pain. And so I can't bear to risk having that further evoked. And so that phrase right there, I think, is really key. And that would be part of my invitation to the writer of this anonymous question, and anyone for whom is feeling some resonance, with this kind of topic of like, I pursue somebody, and then as they start to reciprocate affection, something in me retreats, shuts down, pulls away. I stop responding. Maybe I ghost them. I cut off the relationship to some degree. I don't let it go further. So my invitation here is to be wondering about, okay, what has happened in my life previously, particularly in childhood, though not exclusive to childhood, but usually this is going to have roots there, right? But what has my life been teaching me about intimacy, and intimacy being safe and being reliable enough? It's not even that intimacy and connection has to be perfectly reliable. We just have to have a sense of that in general, it'll be there. In general, my people closest to me will be there, that I can count on them enough. Not perfectly, but enough. It's the same thing in terms of the intrusion wounds. If there was enough repair, then those intrusion wounds may not be festering. They may not be sort of unresolved, because we're going to have breaches of both abandonment and intrusion on at least small levels, in any context, because we're human. The question is, what happens afterwards? Is there repair? Are we having help in being with like how painful that was? Because if we are, then that doesn't get stuck. If we have adequate support to metabolize it, to be with the sorrow, the hurt, the confusion, the pain, the anger, about being hurt in whatever way, then it doesn't get stuck. And if it's not stuck, then when the opportunity for intimacy presents itself again, we're able to be like, oh, the chance for connection, and we can move towards that. So the fact that this individual is sharing, that there's a very clear response of like, nope, we're not doing this, even though other parts of them are like, but this is what we were working towards. Like, what are we doing? Why are we backing away? But for this part is like, you don't understand. I'm connected to all the ways in which this could go bad. We're not doing this. We can't risk it. Too dangerous. Too dangerous. I don't have time to explain. We got to go. Again, it's like that scene in the movie where somebody's like, the building's about to collapse. Get out now. So this is where there's some hard work. There's some hard work ahead of you. If you're someone, whether you're the writer of this letter, or you're someone who is resonating with this topic, with this question, you've got to start to turn towards this place of pain. You may not even be feeling pain yet, right? Like, the way that the individual writes things, I suspect that it's a level of shutdown that they don't actually feel really, they're not in touch with any discomfort. There's discomfort of like, oh, I'm sad that like the relationship didn't materialize. But they're not really sharing about, there's not even an expression actually of fear coming up, though I would wonder about that being under the surface, right? So here's some practical ways to kind of start working with this. If you identify with this kind of scenario, is I would invite you to get a couple things ready. So I'll put in the description a link to my website where I have something called a feeling word list. I'll probably put the body sensation list as well. These kind of they go hand in hand. So the feeling word list, it's really useful for trying to identify, what am I feeling? we all have places where we all have unmetabolized emotion, unmetabolized experiences, because none of us have had perfect lives. Um, None of us have had everything we've needed. And so we can really struggle with, I don't even know what I'm feeling there. Depending on how much we've had to sort of survive and kind of just suck it up, we can really lack sort of the words for what is, I don't even know what that feeling is. And so that's where these two lists are going to be useful. These are not a fix. These are a stepping stone. Okay. So the feeling word list, it's a list of different feeling words grouped by kind of categories. And then the body sensation list is various body sensations. So what I would invite you to do is to set aside some time where you get out these two lists. You can pull them up on your phone. They're mobile friendly, or you can print them out. There's links linked to PDF versions. And let your mind, let your insides, your imagination go back to either the most recent, or if not the most recent, whatever's kind of got, you can access the memory of best. If maybe there was a one that's not as recent, but it's like you really remember the memory of it. But you want to go back to an experience where you've been pursuing someone, and I want you to go, if you can, so find the point where, okay, I started to walk away, and then I want you to actually rewind the tape a bit. I want you to rewind the tape to actually where you're still pursuing them, but you just start to get an inkling that they like you back. And from there, I want you to very slowly, like sort of like you're advancing frame by frame in a movie, very slowly kind of walk through the memory. And I want you to have the feeling word list and the body sensation list handy. And I want you to be referring to those periodically, checking in with, okay, what am I feeling as I just start to get an inkling that they like me back? Maybe at the first inkling, there's excitement. Like, oh, all right, this is what we've been wanting, right? Or maybe not. Maybe even at the first hint that they like you back and are going to reciprocate, there starts to be some negative responses where, and as you go through the feeling word list, you might be like, oh, yeah, I start to feel, kind of scared, or I start to feel angry. Well, that would be an interesting one. Or confused, or if you're using the body sensations, it's like, oh, I start to feel tense, or I start to feel numb. And so it doesn't matter where in the timeline this shows up. What matters is we're trying to find where do you start to have a new set of emotions and bodily sensations happen, right? Because up until this point, you're trucking along, you're pursuing this person who's so interesting to you and so captivating, and you're just like, oh, I can't wait to get to know them, and you're pursuing them and putting yourself out there and taking risks and doing the whole dance of trying to get somebody's attention and whatnot. And then at some point, what we're interested in is, where does it start to shift? Where does a different part of you that has different emotional, experiential, relational kind of memory data, where does that different part start to come up? And what are some of the emotions that part is carrying? Now, look, fair warning here, like we're trying to move towards unresolved pain. So like, this is not going to be easy. And you may not be able to do very much of this on your own. Your insides may not let you go very far because it may just feel too dangerous. And so this is where you really do need to consider, finding a counselor, a mentor. If you're in a religious context and you have religious leaders that you trust, which I realize could be a mixed bag. Like, there's plenty of examples where religious leaders are not trustworthy, but there are good religious leaders out there. They're good humans out there. But you need somebody, in that mentor kind of role who has experience with doing hard work themselves. Ideally, that is going to be a counselor, but not every counselor is doing their own work, unfortunately. So really the more fundamental thing is, like, is this somebody who can go the hard places? If that's a counselor, clergy, a mentor, whatever the category is, a family member, I don't care what the category is, as long as you and they can have an explicit, like, hey, can you be here for me in this way? I need to try to, like, move towards these difficult emotions. And so have some clarity on, like, that they can assist you in that. So yeah, and so then yeah, the goal is to slowly start turning towards whatever it is you've not been able to face previously. And so this is probably going to be sort of the beginnings of this process. This is not going to be quick. Sorry. Um, we Americans love things to be quick and easy and painless, and this is going to be none of those. But often the best things in life are the most important and most valuable and meaningful things require hard work and a lot of time. And this is definitely that, because these parts of you are worth it. And here's the thing, here's the payoff, right? If you do this work, if you help this part of you heal, that's going to enable you to like go into like connection with somebody, right? And this is the payoff you've been wanting. This is why you wrote this. Or if you're somebody who resonates with, this brave person who shared their little bit of their story here, right? This is what you're wanting. You're wanting connection. You're distraught over like another person that I thought was awesome, and then as soon as they started to like me back, I bailed on them. Like, I mean, that's a really discouraging thing. But look, this is changeable. I'm not saying it's going to be easy or comfortable or quick, but it is so very changeable. Like, you can do this. You have this capacity built into you. It is going to take time, and you will need support. Somehow or another, you're going to need support. Otherwise, you would have been doing it already, and you would have written about something different. So yeah, it is gonna be hard, but you're worth it, and this part of you is worth it. This part of you that clearly has somehow or another experienced some negative things, some yucky things around connection and intimacy, because this part is really wary, is really unsure, is like, nope, we got to shut this down. And so I guess that's another thing I want to say out loud is like I want to encourage you to have compassion on this part of you. I know it can be tempting, and it's normal and common to be frustrated, like what the fuck's wrong with me or whatever, and we can be angry, we can feel ashamed, we can be shaming towards ourselves. But look, this part is just trying to protect you. They're trying to protect you from what has not been yet dealt with, what is not yet healed inside of you, and so this part is afraid that bad things will happen again. Again, you may not be conscious of any of this, but this kind of story that is shared, this kind of narrative that is shared, harkens to like something's unaddressed. And so even if you're not conscious of it, and I don't mean there has to be any singular singular event, right? It might be a subtle pattern of just like, yeah, my parents just kind of weren't there. Like maybe they were all right parents, but emotionally like connection wasn't there. And it's so subtle, like I don't even have words for it yet, right? But like, after a bit of therapy, I'll start to be like, oh, yeah, that is kind of the thing. And so that might be the case here, right? Like this individual might be, that might be part of the confusion, is like, well, I feel like I had good parents and feel like things were all right. And things, they could be good parents and things were all right. And there's always gaps, no matter how good parents are. Parents are all trying to do the best they can. They're not, generally not setting out to fuck us over, right? Like they just have, they have their own brokenness and their own stuff that they didn't have, help with, right? I mean, it's just, it's just kind of the nature of things. So it's like, yeah. So I would just want to encourage you to have compassion on yourself, have compassion on your parents as you start to recognize that, stuff about them. Although, you also might start to have anger as you recognize like, oh, there's ways in which I needed them and they weren't there for me, or I needed them to be safe and they weren't, and they were really hurtful instead, or, depending on what, you haven't, kind of engaged with yet. So, you can have all your emotions, right? But yeah, but really, the goal here is not to get stuck in any kind of sort of like shaming, belligerent, kind of posture towards ourselves or others, but to really be trying to understand, like, right, of course I'm protecting myself in this way. Like, that was what I had to do to survive. And I can be grateful that it helped me survive, even though it's not serving me well anymore. It's getting in the way of what I want. Like I want intimacy. I want connection. I want closeness. And I have the capacity to risk and put myself out there, which, what an amazing thing. I mean, I just want to affirm that for the writer and for anyone who resonates with this story. Like, how cool that you've got the muscles for that part. That's great. Some people struggle with that. Some people are going to write in with like Like, hey, I like somebody, but I'm afraid to, risk asking them out. Like, that's a different set of struggles. Also, can relate to I'm afraid of being hurt and afraid of intimacy. And, intimacy has been dangerous or, been unreliable, these kinds of things. But so you're partway there, right? And that's cool. That's like be proud of that, take some comfort in that. And so you can go further, right? You have the capacity to grow and heal and to eventually be able to stay. I mean, in terms of progression, like, my wish for you would be that just initially you start to be able to stay a little bit longer, right? Like, it's not going to be like, okay, I can work through this and now I can like immediately go to like, I'm staying, in the relationship and I'm just, and I'm good. It may be, you may have to go through a number of instances of like where you pursue somebody, you hang in there a bit longer, and then it gets too much and you bail. And you've got to grapple with the regret, the sadness, the loss of that. Um, but the goal here is that you develop your capacity to stay longer and longer to where eventually you can stay in the relationship and you can start to be able to work with the waves of like sort of moving towards them, and then part of you wants to pull away, and then you reapproach tentatively, and then you pull away, like, and where you can take responsibility for like, okay, this is my stuff, this is my struggle, and I have to help this part heal. It's not my partner's job to somehow be perfect enough or whatever, to resolve this for me, because that isn't going to work. It can seem to work maybe for a little bit, but it won't work long term. And because, hey, they're going to have shit too that is going to get evoked by you. And so, that gets all sorts of interesting, right? So yeah. But again, I guess I really want to emphasize, like, this is, you're not hopeless. Like, you're not a terrible person. Like, you're not like hopelessly broken or something. Like, we've all got shit, we've all got brokenness, but we can heal, we can grow, we can change. And yeah, not perfectly, right? But we can grow and change a freaking ton. Like, way more than we tend to think, especially on the front end when it just feels like, oh, how is this ever going to change? So, if you're the writer, or if you resonate with this story, with this anonymous question, and you're having follow-up questions, things you're wanting clarity on that I've said, or maybe you're somebody who resonates with this, but you've got some different particulars. I would love to hear your question, your follow-up questions. So you can go to asksean.org. That's where there's a form, an anonymous form that you can fill out. There's a place on that where you can put in the link from this video, just as so you could say, in reference to this video, here's my follow-up things. I feel similar to this, but different in these other ways. And that kind of gives me a little bit of context of like, okay, so you've seen this video and you're responding to that, or you have particular questions that you want me to flesh out. And yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So, well, until next time, peace be with you.